Director Ilara Voss stood in the glowing light of the Helios Colony's central command center. The holographic display before her flickered once, then went dark. The words that had appeared moments earlier hung in her mind like an ominous shadow: "We regret this decision. Goodbye." The silence that followed was almost suffocating. Around her, the faint hum of machinery and the muted chatter of her staff were the only sounds. Ilara's staff exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright fear. "Run the diagnostics again," Ilara ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. Theo Grayson, her lead communications officer, looked up from his console. His eyes were apologetic. "We've already done that, 3 times. The quantum relays are stable. Earth has just stopped transmitting." Ilara's chest tightened. Helios was humanity's most distant colony, settled over 2 centuries ago on the fringes of a neighboring galaxy. Contact with Earth had always been their lifeline, a reminder of their origins and a connection to a civilization far away. "Options," she said, turning to the room. Dr. Marin Hall, the colony's chief scientist, responded first. "Our infrastructure is self-sufficient. Food synthesizers, water recyclers, antimatter reactors, all operational." But psychologically, she hesitated. "We've never faced something like this. Isolation on this scale could destabilize the community." Ilara nodded. The Helios colony was home to 100,000 people. They could survive without Earth, but mere survival wasn't enough. A sense of purpose was critical to their identity, and Earth had always been a part of that. "Prepare an emergency council meeting," she instructed. "And get me the latest inventory reports. We need a clear picture of where we stand." The emergency meeting convened in the colony's assembly hall hours later. Representatives from every sector of Helios gathered, their faces a mixture of worry and curiosity. Ilara stood at the podium, scanning the room before speaking. "By now, you've all heard the news. Earth has stopped transmitting. We don't know why, and we don't know if or when that will change," she began. Her voice carried across the hall, firm yet empathetic. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some council members whispered among themselves, while others sat in stunned silence. Ilara continued. "What we do know is this: everything that made us human is still here. Our ingenuity, our resilience, our ability to adapt. Those didn't stay on Earth, they came with us." A hand shot up in the audience. It was Talia Oren, the head of resource management. "Director, what happens if Earth never responds? How long can we sustain ourselves?" Ilara met her gaze. "Indefinitely. Our systems are designed for long-term self-sufficiency. This is not a question of resources, it's a question of identity. We've always been Earth's colony. Now we have to ask ourselves, who are we without Earth?" The hall fell silent, her words sinking in. After a long pause, Counselor Aaron Malik stood. "Perhaps this is an opportunity. We've always defined ourselves by Earth's standards. Maybe it's time we start defining ourselves as something new." Late that night, Ilara sat alone in her office. Through the reinforced window, she could see the twin moons of Kepler-47 casting silver light over the alien plains. This world was beautiful but harsh, just like the reality they now faced. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Theo, holding a tablet. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, placing the device on her desk. It displayed a summary of the public's reactions to the announcement. Fear was the dominant sentiment, but there were also glimmers of hope. Many colonists were already discussing ways to innovate, to adapt, to forge a new path. "They're scared," Theo said. "But they're not giving up." Ilara smiled faintly. "Neither can we." As Theo left, she opened a blank document on her console. Its title read, Day 1 of Helios Independence. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she began to type. Today, the connection to Earth was lost. But our connection to each other remains. If humanity's story is to continue, we must write it ourselves. The following morning, a young boy named Kael wandered into the ruins on the colony's outskirts. The site, long dismissed as a remnant of an ancient alien civilization, had always fascinated him. As Kael traced his fingers over the strange, glowing patterns etched into the stone, a low hum began to vibrate through the air. Startled, he stepped back, but the patterns brightened, responding to his touch. Unbeknownst to Kael, his discovery would soon become the colony's lifeline, and the first step toward defining their future. The ruins hummed with energy as Kael hesitated, his hand hovering over the glowing patterns. He wasn't supposed to be there, the ruins were off-limits to unaccompanied colonists. But something about the intricate designs called to him, a pull he couldn't resist. His sister Sarah had followed him, her small footsteps echoing in the cavernous chamber. She tugged at his sleeve, her wide eyes filled with both wonder and fear. "Kael, we shouldn't be here," she whispered. Ignoring her, Kael pressed his palm against the cool surface. The glow intensified, and the patterns began to shift, rearranging themselves like living threads of light. A resonant tone filled the air, a sound so deep it seemed to vibrate through his bones. Sarah gasped as the entire chamber illuminated. For a moment it was as though the stars themselves had descended into the room. Lines of energy connected every surface, forming a network that stretched beyond what their eyes could see. The noise must have been louder than Kael realized, because moments later, figures appeared in the entrance to the ruins. It was Director Elara Voss, flanked by Dr. Marin Hall and a team of scientists. They stared in shock at the now active ruins, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. Elara stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Kael, step away from the wall." Kael hesitated, then obeyed. The light dimmed but didn't vanish entirely, leaving a faint glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. "What happened?" Elara asked, her gaze shifting between Kael and Sarah. Kael shrugged, unsure how to explain. "I don't know. I just touched it." Dr. Hall approached the wall, scanning it with a handheld device. Her eyebrows furrowed as the readings appeared. "This isn't just a structure. It's a machine." And whatever Kael did, it woke something up. The scientists immediately began analyzing the ruins, their excitement barely contained. But Elara remained focused on Kael. "You shouldn't have been here. Do you understand how dangerous this could have been?" Kael nodded, guilt creeping into his expression. "I'm sorry. But it felt like, it wanted me to." Those words stayed with Elara as they returned to the colony. The ruins had been dormant for as long as humanity had been on this planet, a relic of a long-dead civilization. If they were waking up now, what did that mean? Back at the colony, Elara called a private meeting with Dr. Hall and the council. The room buzzed with tension as the scientists shared their preliminary findings. The ruins, they explained, were part of a vast network of ancient technology, likely interconnected across the planet. The energy surge triggered by Kael's touch had activated systems they didn't even know existed. Counselor Malik leaned forward, his expression skeptical. "You're saying a teenager accidentally turned on technology we don't understand? That doesn't sound like good news." Dr. Hall shook her head. "It's not just Kael. The energy signatures suggest it's responding to something unique about him, and possibly others like him." Elara's mind raced. If the ruins were truly responding to Kael, it meant they were dealing with more than just an archaeological discovery. It could be a turning point for the colony, but it also raised a dangerous question: what else might this technology attract? The council debated late into the night, weighing the risks and rewards of further exploration. In the end, Elara made the call. The ruins would be studied under strict supervision, with Kael's involvement closely monitored. The following day, Kael found himself back at the ruins, this time under the watchful eyes of the scientists. He was nervous but also excited. As he placed his hand on the wall again, the glow returned, and the patterns shifted once more. This time, they formed an image, a map of the galaxy, dotted with countless points of light. The room fell silent as the map expanded, its detail far beyond anything the colony's technology could produce. Kael felt a strange connection to it, as if the patterns were speaking directly to him. Elara stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are we looking at?" Dr. Hall studied the projection, her face pale. "These are star systems. And if I'm reading this right, the ruins just sent a signal to all of them." A cold silence settled over the group. The implications were staggering. If the ruins had broadcast their location, who, or what, might come looking for them? Elara turned to Kael, her expression serious. "You may have just woken something far bigger than this colony. We need to be ready for whatever happens next." As they left the ruins, Kael couldn't shake the feeling that the ruins hadn't just been waiting for someone like him, they had been waiting for him specifically. And now, the future of the colony rested on what they chose to do with the knowledge they had uncovered. The stars on the map lingered in his mind, each one a beacon of possibility and danger. Whatever was out there, Kael knew one thing for certain: Helios Colony's story was just beginning. The map lingered in Kael's mind as he lay awake in his bunk that night. The glowing stars, each one a distant mystery, seemed to pulse in his thoughts. He tried to shake the feeling that the ruins weren't just ancient relics, they were alive in some way, aware of his presence. Sleep finally came, but his dreams were filled with voices and patterns he couldn't understand. The next morning, Kael found himself summoned to Director Elara Voss's office. The room was stark and utilitarian, with a few personal touches, a photograph of Earth, a small potted plant, and a worn leather-bound journal. Elara gestured for him to sit as she studied the glowing holographic display on her desk. "You've caused quite a stir, Kael," she said, her tone even but firm. "I didn't mean to," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know," Elara said, leaning forward. "But what you've uncovered changes everything. The ruins are more than we ever imagined, and it seems you have a unique connection to them. We need to understand why." Kael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't know why they respond to me. It's like, they just know I'm there." Elara studied him for a moment before nodding. "Dr. Hall wants to run some tests, but I need you to understand something. What you've discovered might be the key to our survival, or our destruction. From now on, every step we take must be carefully planned." Kael nodded, though he didn't fully understand the weight of her words. Later that day, he found himself back at the ruins, surrounded by a team of scientists and engineers. They had set up a temporary research station, with equipment monitoring every flicker of energy from the ancient walls. Kael approached the wall hesitantly, feeling the now familiar pull. As his hand touched the surface, the patterns shifted again, forming a complex web of light that stretched into the air. The scientists murmured excitedly as their instruments lit up with readings. Dr. Hall stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the projection. "This isn't just a map, it's a network," she said. "The ruins are part of a larger system, and it's connected to other locations across the galaxy." Elara, who had joined the group, frowned. "And what happens if someone, or something, follows that connection back here?" Before anyone could answer, the projection changed. The web of light condensed into a single, focused beam that pointed to a specific star system on the map. The room fell silent as the meaning became clear. Kael turned to Elara, his voice trembling. "I think it's trying to show us where to go." The revelation sent ripples through the colony. Elara called an emergency council meeting to discuss the implications. Some argued that they should leave the ruins alone, fearing the attention they might attract. Others saw it as an opportunity to expand their knowledge and secure new resources. Counselor Malik was among the skeptics. "We don't know what's out there. For all we know, following this signal could lead us straight into danger." Dr. Hall countered, and doing nothing could leave us vulnerable. The ruins are the most advanced technology we've ever encountered. If we don't explore their potential, we might be wasting our best chance to secure the colony's future. Ilara listened carefully to both sides before making her decision. We'll send a small exploratory team to the coordinates. If there's a threat, we need to know about it. And if there's an opportunity, we can't afford to miss it. Kael was chosen to join the mission, much to his surprise. Despite his inexperience, his unique connection to the ruins made him an invaluable asset. The team included Dr. Hall, Lieutenant Yarrick Rains from security, and 2 seasoned pilots. As the crew prepared for departure, Kael felt a mixture of excitement and dread. He had never left the colony before, and now he was about to venture into the unknown. Sarah watched him with wide eyes, her usual confidence replaced by worry. "Promise me you'll come back," she said, gripping his hand tightly. "I promise," Kael said, though he wasn't sure he could keep it. The ship, a modified scout vessel named Aether's Wing, lifted off under the watchful eyes of the entire colony. Kael stared out the viewport as the alien landscape of Kepler-47 shrank below them, replaced by the vast expanse of stars. As they approached the coordinates, the ship's sensors picked up something unusual, a massive structure orbiting a gas giant. It was similar in design to the ruins on their planet, but much larger and more intricate. Dr. Hall's voice crackled over the comms. "This is it. The source of the signal." The team exchanged uneasy glances as they prepared to dock with the structure. Kael felt the now familiar hum in his chest, stronger than ever. Whatever waited for them inside, he knew it was only the beginning. The ship's airlock opened, revealing a cavernous interior filled with faintly glowing patterns. Kael stepped forward, his heart pounding. The ruins had chosen him for a reason, and now he was about to find out why. The interior of the alien structure was vast, its scale dwarfing anything the team had encountered before. The walls shimmered with the same intricate patterns Kael had seen in the ruins back on Kepler-47, but here, the light pulsed with an intensity that made the air hum with energy. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. Kael felt the pull again, stronger this time, guiding him deeper into the structure. Dr. Hall kept a close eye on him, her portable scanner whirring softly as it collected data. "The energy levels here are off the charts," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "Whatever this place is, it's alive in a way we don't fully understand." Lieutenant Yarrick Rains, ever pragmatic, gripped his weapon tightly as his eyes scanned the shadows. "Alive or not, we need to be ready for anything. Places like this don't just stay hidden for millions of years without a reason." Kael's voice broke the tension. "It's not just alive, it's waiting." His words hung in the air, unsettling the group. He couldn't explain how he knew, but the structure felt aware, as though it had been expecting them. They reached a central chamber, its ceiling soaring high above, filled with a swirling vortex of light and energy. In the center stood a pedestal, its surface glowing faintly. Kael hesitated before stepping forward, the pull in his chest now almost overwhelming. As his hand hovered over the pedestal, a voice, soft and melodic, yet impossibly ancient, filled the room. It wasn't speaking a language they recognized, yet Kael somehow understood. "Welcome, heir of the song. Your presence has reawakened the forgotten symphony." Kael's eyes widened as the patterns on the pedestal shifted, forming a holographic projection of a vast network that spanned the galaxy. Stars blinked to life across the map, each one representing a location connected to the ruins. The projection then zoomed in on a single point, Helios Colony. "What's it saying?" Dr. Hall asked, her voice tense. Kael tried to piece together the meaning. "It's calling us, caretakers. Guardians of something ancient, something important. It's trying to share its knowledge." Before he could say more, the projection changed again. A new star system lit up, accompanied by a series of images, towering crystalline structures, flowing rivers of light, and finally, a dark shadow descending upon them. The tone of the voice shifted, becoming urgent. The Riftborn awaken. They will come for the song. Jarek's hand tightened on his weapon. I don't like the sound of that. What's a Riftborn? Dr. Hall's face paled as she examined the data streams displayed by her scanner. If I'm interpreting this correctly, the Riftborn are a predatory force, a species or entity that consumes advanced civilizations connected to this network. Ilara's warning back at the colony echoed in Kael's mind. What happens if someone, or something, follows that connection back here? He turned to the others, his voice steady despite the growing fear in his chest. We need to get back. The colony has to be prepared. As they made their way back to the ship, the structure seemed to come alive around them. Patterns shifted and pulsed in time with their movements, as though the entire place was reacting to their presence. Kael couldn't shake the feeling that it was trying to tell him something, urging him to act. Once aboard the Ether's wing, the team prepared to leave, but as the ship powered up, the structure emitted a beam of light that enveloped them. For a moment, everything went still. Kael felt a surge of energy pass through him, and in that instant, he saw glimpses of worlds beyond his comprehension, planets teeming with life, civilizations rising and falling, and the ever-present shadow of the Riftborn. When the beam dissipated, the ship's systems flickered back to life. Dr. Hall's voice was shaky as she examined her readings. The structure just uploaded something into our systems. It's like it's arming us. Jarek raised an eyebrow. Arming us? For what? Kael met his gaze, his voice grim. For a war. The return journey to the colony was tense. Everyone on board understood the gravity of what they had discovered. Kael sat in silence, the weight of the ruins' message pressing heavily on his mind. He didn't know what the Riftborn were, but he could feel their presence, distant yet inevitable. When they landed at Helios, Director Ilara Voss was waiting. The team's report was swift and thorough, detailing everything they had seen and heard. The room fell silent when Kael described the Riftborn and the warning from the ruins. Ilara's expression was unreadable as she absorbed the information. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm but firm. If the Riftborn are coming, we need to be ready. We'll focus all our efforts on understanding this technology and preparing our defenses. Kael hesitated before adding, the ruins didn't just warn us, they gave us tools. But it's up to us to figure out how to use them. Ilara nodded. Then we'll start immediately. Whatever's coming, we'll face it together. As Kael left the meeting, he couldn't shake the feeling that the ruins had chosen him for a reason. The Riftborn were coming, and the fate of the colony, and perhaps the galaxy, might depend on what he could unlock from the ancient technology. For now, the stars above Helios seemed calm, but Kael knew it was only a matter of time before the storm arrived. The colony was abuzz with activity following the team's return. The council had declared a state of emergency, and every resource was being funneled into preparing for the potential arrival of the Riftborn. The ancient technology uploaded by the alien structure was quickly disseminated to key departments, but deciphering it was another matter entirely. Kael found himself thrust into the center of the effort. Scientists and engineers peppered him with questions about his experiences in the ruins, hoping his connection to the technology would yield insights. He didn't have answers for most of their questions, but every time he revisited the ruins or engaged with the alien systems, he felt that strange resonance guiding him. Dr. Hall worked tirelessly alongside Kael, piecing together fragments of the data. Together, they discovered that the ruins contained defensive systems, shield generators, energy weapons, and even the capacity to manipulate gravitational fields. But activating them was a complex puzzle, requiring a deep understanding of the alien language embedded in the ruins' patterns. Ilara visited the ruins frequently, her calm demeanor masking the immense pressure she felt. Standing beside Kael as he worked, she asked, "Do you think we have enough time?" Kael hesitated. "I don't know. The Riftborn feel close. Like they're watching, waiting. But I think the ruins are trying to help us. Elara nodded, her gaze fixed on the glowing patterns. Then we'll keep pushing. If there's even a chance to defend the colony, we'll take it. As days turned into weeks, the colony's preparations began to take shape. The alien technology was integrated into their existing infrastructure, enhancing their defenses. Energy shields were installed around critical areas, and automated turrets equipped with advanced targeting systems were placed along the perimeter. Still, the mood within the colony remained tense. The Riftborn were an unknown threat, and no one could predict how or when they would strike. Kael's younger sister, Sarah, began spending more time at the ruins, drawn to the same energy that captivated her brother. Unlike Kael, who interacted with the technology cautiously, Sarah seemed to understand it instinctively. She could predict how the patterns would shift and even identify functions before they were activated. Her abilities didn't go unnoticed, and soon she became an integral part of the research team. One evening, while Kael and Sarah worked together in the ruins, the patterns on the walls shifted suddenly, forming a new projection. It was a series of star systems, connected by glowing lines. At the center of the network was a pulsating light, Helios Colony. The lines branching out from it led to distant points, each marked by a faint, ominous glow. Sarah tilted her head, studying the projection. "They're showing us the Riftborn's path," she said quietly. Kael stared at the glowing lines, his stomach tightening. "They're closing in on us." The realization spurred the colony into overdrive. Elara convened a meeting of the council and key personnel, presenting the new information. "We're not just dealing with a potential threat, we're on a countdown. The Riftborn are moving through this network, and Helios is their destination." Counselor Malik, ever the skeptic, leaned forward. "And what exactly are we supposed to do against something that predatory? We've never faced anything like this." Dr. Hall interjected. "The ruins have given us tools, advanced defenses, energy systems far beyond our own capabilities. If we can fully activate them, we stand a chance." Elara's voice was steady as she addressed the room. "Our ancestors crossed galaxies to build this colony. They faced the unknown with courage, and so will we. We don't know the full extent of what we're capable of yet, but we'll find out, together." As the colony rallied, Kael and Sarah returned to the ruins, determined to unlock the final pieces of the puzzle. Days of intense work led to a breakthrough. Sarah discovered a hidden chamber deep within the ruins, its entrance obscured by layers of shifting patterns. Inside, they found a control interface unlike anything they'd seen before. It emitted a faint hum, its surface smooth and glowing. Kael approached the interface cautiously. As his hand hovered over it, the room filled with light. Patterns swirled around them, forming intricate geometries that seemed to dance in response to his presence. The alien voice from before returned, its tone solemn yet resolute. "The guardians must stand. The song must endure." The chamber shook as the interface activated, sending a surge of energy through the ruins. Outside, the colony's sensors lit up as new systems came online. The defensive network expanded, integrating with the ruins to form a planetary shield. Automated drones emerged from hidden compartments, their sleek forms ready for battle. Sarah turned to Kael, her eyes wide. "It's all connected. The ruins, the colony, everything, they're meant to work together." Kael nodded, his mind racing. "But it's not enough to defend. We need to stop the Riftborn before they reach us." The voice spoke again, its message clear. "The key lies in the source. The heart of the Riftborn must be silenced." Kael turned to Sarah, his resolve hardening. "We need to find their origin. It's the only way to stop them for good." The siblings returned to the colony with their findings, sharing the voice's message with Elara and the council. The revelation brought a mix of hope and fear. To strike at the heart of the Riftborn was a bold plan, but it carried immense risk. Elara's decision was firm. If the only way to protect the colony is to face them head-on, then that's what we'll do. We'll prepare an expedition to the source. As the preparations began, Kael couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. The ruins had chosen him and Sarah for a reason, and now they carried the hopes of the entire colony. The Riftborn were coming, but so was humanity's determination to survive. The colony worked tirelessly to prepare for the expedition. Every department contributed, from engineering teams retrofitting ships with alien technology to scientists analyzing every byte of data the ruins had provided. The colony's best minds were united in a singular purpose, to strike at the Riftborn before they reached Helios. Kael and Sarah were at the heart of the effort, spending long hours in the ruins. The interface in the hidden chamber continued to reveal fragments of information about the Riftborn, their network, and their weaknesses. Sarah, with her uncanny ability to decipher the alien patterns, made progress faster than anyone expected. This, she said one evening, pointing to a swirling hologram, is the Riftborn's core, a massive construct located at the center of their network. It's their source of power, the anchor for their entire existence. Kael studied the image. The construct was vast, a fortress surrounded by streams of energy that pulsed with an ominous glow. If we can destroy that, we can stop them, he said. Dr. Hall, who had been listening from nearby, nodded. The data suggests the core is vulnerable to the same energy the ruins use, something the Riftborn can't adapt to. If we can channel that energy into a weapon. Sarah interrupted, her voice sharp. It's not just a weapon. The ruins are designed to harmonize with the core's energy, to disrupt it completely. But it'll take more than just activating the systems here. We'll need to be at the source to trigger it. The implications were clear, someone would have to travel deep into Riftborn territory, to the heart of their network. It was a suicide mission for anyone unprepared. Yet, Kael didn't hesitate. I'll go, he said, his voice steady. Sarah looked at him sharply. You're not going alone. The council approved the mission, recognizing that this was their only chance to prevent the Riftborn from reaching Helios. A specialized team was assembled, consisting of Kael, Sarah, Dr. Hall, Lieutenant Yarrick Rains, and a handful of experienced pilots and engineers. Their ship, the Aether's Edge, was outfitted with the most advanced technology the ruins had provided, including experimental shields and weapons. As they prepared to depart, the colony gathered to see them off. Elara stood before the crowd, her voice carrying across the assembly. Today, we send our best and brightest into the unknown. They carry with them our hopes, our courage, and the legacy of humanity. Whatever lies ahead, we stand together. Kael felt the weight of her words as he boarded the ship. He glanced at Sarah, who gave him a reassuring nod. We've got this, she said, though her voice betrayed a hint of nervousness. The Aether's Edge lifted off, its engines roaring as it ascended into the star-filled sky. As the planet fell away beneath them, Kael stared out the viewport, his thoughts a jumble of fear and determination. The journey to the Riftborn core was fraught with danger. The further they traveled into the network, the more unstable the space around them became. Strange energy fluctuations disrupted their sensors, and shadows flickered at the edges of their vision. It was as if the Riftborn's presence warped reality itself. Lieutenant Rains kept the crew on high alert, his tactical instincts sharp. We're in their territory now, he said grimly. Stay sharp. They'll know we're coming. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the Riftborn appeared. Their ships were unlike anything the crew had seen, dark, jagged constructs that seemed to shift and twist as if alive. The Aether's Edge engaged its new weapons, firing beams of energy derived from the ruins. The alien vessels faltered under the onslaught, their forms disintegrating into nothingness. Despite their success, the battles took a toll. The Riftborn came in waves, testing the ship's defenses and wearing down the crew's nerves. Sarah worked tirelessly at the controls, using the ruins' data to navigate the hostile territory. Kael, meanwhile, felt the pull of the network growing stronger. The closer they got to the core, the more he sensed its presence, like a faint heartbeat in his mind. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the core. The construct was even more imposing than the hologram had suggested, a massive, pulsating sphere surrounded by swirling energy streams. It radiated power, its presence overwhelming. Dr. Hall's voice was tense as she examined the readings. This is it. If we can harmonize the ruins' energy with the core, we can disrupt their entire network. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across the controls. I'm locking in the frequency. Kael, we'll need you to interface with the core directly. It's the only way to activate the system. Kael swallowed hard but didn't hesitate. He moved to the interface, feeling the now familiar resonance as his hands touched the controls. The patterns around him flared to life, their light filling the chamber. The core responded, its energy streams shifting and aligning with the ruins' frequency. The Riftborn reacted immediately. Dozens of their ships emerged from the shadows, converging on the ether's edge. Lieutenant Rains and the pilots fought desperately to hold them off, but the odds were overwhelming. Kael focused on the patterns, blocking out the chaos around him. The resonance grew stronger, and he felt a connection unlike anything he had experienced before. The ruins, the core, the Riftborn, it was all part of the same system, a balance that had been disrupted. It's ready. Sarah shouted. Do it now. Kael took a deep breath and activated the system. The energy streams pulsed once, twice, then surged outward in a blinding wave of light. The Riftborn ships froze mid-attack, their forms unraveling as the energy consumed them. The core trembled, its pulsating light dimming until it finally collapsed in on itself. As silence fell over the battlefield, Kael slumped against the controls, exhaustion washing over him. The Riftborn were gone, their presence erased from the network. The crew of the Ether's Edge stared at the now empty void where the core had been. They had done it. The Riftborn threat was over. Kael looked at Sarah, her face pale but triumphant. We stopped them, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah nodded, a small smile breaking through her fatigue. We did. As they turned the ship back toward Helios, Kael felt a sense of peace for the first time since the ruins had awakened. The colony was safe, and humanity had proven, once again, that they were more than capable of surviving the unknown. The journey back to Helios was a quiet one. The crew of the Ether's Edge had triumphed, but the victory came with a cost. The Riftborn were defeated, their core destroyed, yet the battle had left its mark on everyone. Kael sat in the dimly lit cabin, staring out at the stars as they streaked past the viewport. For the first time since this journey began, the silence felt comforting rather than ominous. Sarah joined him, settling into the seat beside him. You did it, she said softly. Kael shook his head. We did it. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Sarah smiled faintly. You were the one who connected with the ruins. They chose you for a reason. He looked at her, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Do you think this is really over? That the Riftborn are gone for good? Sarah hesitated before replying. I think we've cut off their power, their anchor. They won't be able to rebuild easily. But I don't know if they're truly gone. Kael nodded, her words resonating with his own thoughts. Then we'll be ready if they ever come back. When the Ether's Edge finally entered Helios orbit, the entire colony was waiting. The landing platform was packed with colonists, their cheers echoing as the ship descended. Elara Voss stood at the forefront, her expression one of relief and pride. As the crew disembarked, she greeted each of them personally, saving Kael and Sarah for last. You've done more than save this colony, Elara said, her voice filled with emotion. You've shown us that we're capable of so much more than survival. You've given us hope for the future. Kael felt a lump rise in his throat. We couldn't have done it without the colony behind us. This was all of us. Elara nodded, her gaze steady. Still, what you've done will be remembered for generations. You've made history, Kael. The days that followed were filled with celebrations, but also reflection. The ruins, now fully integrated with the colony, continued to reveal their secrets. The defensive systems remained active, and the colony's technology had advanced light years in a matter of months. Helios was no longer just a distant outpost. It was a beacon of human ingenuity and resilience. Kael and Sarah spent much of their time at the ruins, continuing to unlock their mysteries. Though the Riftborn were gone, the ruins still held countless secrets. Sarah's ability to understand the alien patterns had grown, and together they began to map out the full extent of the ancient network. One evening, as the twin moons of Kepler-47 cast their light over the alien plains, Kael stood before the ruins, his hand resting on the now familiar patterns. The resonance was still there, but it felt different, calmer, more settled. Sarah joined him, her gaze thoughtful. "What now?" she asked. Kael smiled faintly. "We keep going. There's so much more to learn, so much more to build. We're not just surviving anymore, Sarah. We're thriving." As they stood together, the ruins pulsed gently, their light blending with the stars above. The colony's journey was far from over, but for the first time, Kael felt certain of one thing: humanity's place in the galaxy was secure, and their story was only just beginning. Back at the colony, Elara wrote the final entry in the log she had started the day they lost contact with Earth. Day 214 of Helios independence. The Riftborn are gone, their threat neutralized by the courage and ingenuity of our people. Our colony stands stronger than ever, united by a purpose greater than survival. We are no longer Earth's children, left behind in the galaxy. We are pioneers, guardians, and builders of our own future. As she signed her name, Elara looked out at the colony she had worked so hard to protect. The lights of Helios shone brightly in the distance, a testament to humanity's strength and determination. And in the ruins, the patterns continued to glow, their ancient energy a reminder of the endless possibilities still waiting to be discovered.